Hi, and welcome to the Deep Dive. This is a show we put together just for you, really digging into source material to pull out what matters most. We cut through the clutter just to get you well-informed fast. Today, we're diving into something maybe you don't think about much, but it's absolutely key in global healthcare. We're talking about the global vascular access market. All our insights today, they're coming from a detailed financial overview by Cognitive Market Research. It looks at projections starting from 2021, going all the way out to 2033. And our mission, well, it's to get past just the numbers. We want to understand the trends, find those surprising high spots, and figure out what it actually means for you. Okay, so let's unpack this. The big picture. This market is, well, it's big and it's growing. A lot. Globally, the source says it generated over $7.5 billion back in 2021. And get this projection. It's expected to hit over $9 billion by 2025. And then climb up to a pretty remarkable $13 billion by 2033. That's an average annual growth rate, a CAGR, of almost 5%, 4.7% to be exact.
Yeah, and it's fascinating because vascular access, I mean, it sounds quite technical, doesn't it?
It is a bit, yeah.
But it's really the absolute bedrock of so much modern medicine. We're essentially talking about how doctors and nurses get access to a patient's bloodstream. And that's critical for, well, everything, quickly giving life-saving drugs, fluids.
Right, like in an emergency.
Exactly. Or drawing blood for diagnostics, figuring out what's wrong, and also for long-term stuff like dialysis for kidney patients or chemotherapy.
So these numbers aren't just sales figures.
Not at all. They reflect real health trends happening globally, amazing medical advancements, and just this growing need for, effective patient care. Understanding this market, it really tells us where these vital medical services are expanding.
Okay, so we had this big global growth picture. Where is it happening most? Let's zoom in, maybe North America first.
Good place to start.
It looks like they have a commanding lead. Over $3.1 billion in 2021. And projected to hit nearly $3.8 billion by 2025, and then over $5.3 billion by 2033. And that's a solid growth rate, too, about 4.5% annually.
Yeah, and within North America, well, the U.S. is the giant, as you'd probably guess.
Makes sense.
They accounted for, let's see, over $2.5 billion of that back in 2021, and they're projected to reach over $4.2 billion by 2033. So that's a CAGR of just over 4%. 4.22%.
Okay.
Canada's showing strong numbers, too. Started around $320 million, expected to get over $620 million by 2033. Their annual growth rate, impressive, over 5.1%.
Better than the U.S. rate, then?
A bit, yeah. But here's where it gets, really interesting. Mexico.
Oh, yeah. What's the story there?
Well, it's a smaller market in total value, started around $288 million in 2021,
Wow.
but it's projected to nearly double over $537 million by 2033. And its annual growth rate is almost 6%, 5.914%.
Wow, nearly 6%. So noticeably higher than both the U.S. and Canada.
Exactly. Within the region, it's really showing accelerated growth.
Any thoughts on why that might be?
It could be a mix of things, maybe better healthcare access spreading, maybe rising rates of chronic diseases that need that long-term vascular access, or perhaps even specific government programs boosting medical infrastructure. It's definitely one to watch.
Okay, interesting. Let's move across the Atlantic then. How's Europe looking? They hold a pretty significant share too, right?
Absolutely.
The data shows Europe overall was over $1.9 billion in 2021, expected to hit $2.3 billion by 2025, and then grow to over $3.2 billion by 2033. The average growth there is around 4.3% per year.
And within Europe, you see some familiar heavy hitters. Germany, for instance, started over $450 million in 21, projected to cross $800 million by 2033. That's growing at nearly 4.8% annually.
Okay.
The UK is another big one, moving from around $335 million up to over $620 million by 2033. Their growth is just under 5% a year, 4.968%.
That's all strong.
Yeah, and then you've got steady growth across others. France, Italy, Russia, Spain, Sweden, Denmark, Switzerland, Luxembourg. Their KGRs are mostly in the, roughly 3 to 4% range, some a bit lower, like Switzerland around 2.8%.
Right, a solid base across the board.
But here's a really striking point. There's this category called Rest of Europe.
Okay.
This group, which covers a lot of the smaller or maybe emerging economies in Europe, it shows this, surprisingly strong annual growth rate, over 7%.
7%. That's way higher than Germany or the UK.
Significantly higher. It's projected to nearly double from about $104 million in 2021 to over 200 million by 2033.
Wow. What does that suggest?
It really suggests that, basic healthcare infrastructure and services are expanding rapidly across a wider range of European countries, maybe driven by things like EU development funds or perhaps more private investment flowing into those areas.
Fascinating. Okay, now let's turn to Asia Pacific. You called it a powerhouse of growth earlier.
It really is. The numbers back that up.
APAC's totals were over 1.5 billion back in 2021, expected to reach almost 1.9 billion by 2025, and then a projected 2.8 billion by 2033. That's an average annual growth rate of over 5.1%, higher than North America and Europe.
Yeah, and how that growth breaks down in APAC is quite interesting. China is just huge. Over 525 million in 2021.
Right.
Projected to hit $1 billion by 2033.
$1 billion, wow.
Yeah, growing at over 5.4% annually. Japan's next, started over 300 million, heading towards nearly 530 million by 2033. Its growth is a bit slower, just over 4.6%.
Still significant.
Definitely. And look at India, really strong growth here, from about 154 million in 2021 to about 116 million projected by 2033. That's an annual growth rate of almost 6%.
6% for India, very strong.
It is. And we also see good contributions from South Korea, Australia, Singapore, Southeast Asia as a whole, all growing above 4.7% annually. But Taiwan really jumps out.
What are their numbers?
A really notable annual growth rate of over 6.7%.
6.7, that's high.
It is. They're projected to more than double their market size from around 48 million in 2021 to over 100 million by 2033.
What could be driving that in Taiwan?
Could be a few things converging. Perhaps a rapidly aging population needing more healthcare, combined with, very quick adoption of advanced medical tech, plus likely strong government support for healthcare.
That's quite a dynamic picture in APAC.
Yeah.
Okay, let's journey south now. What about South America? The totals there, over 384 million in 2021, growing to over 450 million in 2025, and expected to hit over 639 million by 2033. The average growth, about 4.4% annually.
Right. And within South America, Brazil is the clear leader. Started around 167 million in 2021, projected to get over 283 million by 2033. That's about 4.6% growth per year.
Okay.
Argentina also shows pretty impressive growth, from about 53 million up to over 93 million. Their annual growth rate is a strong 5%.
5%, nice.
Yes, suggests maybe growing investment in their healthcare system, maybe more need for chronic disease management, that kind of thing. And then you have solid contributions from places like Colombia, Peru, Chile, all expanding steadily too.
Got it. Okay, turning our attention now to the Middle East, another region showing consistent expansion, it seems.
Yes, definitely growing.
The totals there were around 338 million in 2021, set to grow to nearly 420 million by 2025. And then over 630 million by 2033. That's an impressive average growth rate, too, over 5.2%.
And drilling down a bit, Saudi Arabia leads the pack there, over 131 million back in 2021, projected to hit over 237 million by 2033, growing at nearly 5% annually.
Okay.
Other key markets, Turkey, the UAE. The UAE has a particularly strong growth rate, almost 6% annually.
Nearly 6% for the UAE. Wow.
Yeah, it could be tied to things like its medical tourism focus, lots of infrastructure development, maybe the expanding expat population.
Exactly.
And then you've got Egypt and Qatar showing solid growth too. And interestingly, just like in Europe, that rest of Middle East category, it also shows a really high TGR, over 6.6%.
So broad development there too.
Seems like a widespread increase in healthcare capabilities across the region.
All right, our final stop, Africa. Now, this region might surprise some people with its growth potential.
It's definitely the one with the highest growth rate.
Yeah, the overall figures were, over 173 million in 2021, rising to over 214 million by 2025, and projected to hit 376 million by 2033. And that reflects, as you said, the highest overall regional TGR across the entire globe, a massive 7.3%.
It's really significant. I mean, yes, Africa is currently the smallest market if you just look at the total dollar value.
Right.
But that growth rate, over 7%, it's the fastest globally by a noticeable margin.
Yeah.
It signals this huge upswing in healthcare demand and hopefully access.
Where specifically in Africa is that growth concentrated? Well, Nigeria shows really strong growth, nearly 7.9% annually, expanding from about 68 million up to over 156 million by 2033.
Almost 8%. That's huge.
It is. And even more impressive, South Africa. It boasts the leading individual country CAGR in the whole report. over 8%.
8% annual growth for South Africa.
8.035%, yeah. Growing from about 78 million in 2021 to a projected 184 million, roughly, by 2033.
Incredible.
These figures just clearly highlight this accelerating need for vascular access solutions across the continent, probably driven by, more healthcare investment, growing populations, and, unfortunately, the rising burden of chronic diseases, too.
So putting it all together, whether it's the established dominance of North America, those surprising growth pockets in Europe and Asia, or this really explosive growth in Africa, the global vascular access market is just consistently expanding everywhere.
Absolutely.
It seems like a really clear sign of a worldwide increase in demand for these fundamental medical procedures and the tech that supports them.
So, thinking about what this all means for you, the listener, these market dynamics, they're way more than just numbers on a page, right?
Right.
They really reflect these big underlying shifts. Things like global healthcare investment patterns, demographic changes like aging populations needing more care, and just this increasing demand everywhere for medical services and technology. It kind of prompts you to think, doesn't it? How do these specific numbers show where healthcare resources, where innovation is likely to really boom in the next decade?
Exactly. This deep dive really showed us that demand for something quite fundamental like vascular access isn't just growing steadily, it's actually accelerating in some surprising places. We really hope this gave you a valuable shortcut to getting informed on this specific but clearly critical market. Thanks so much for joining us on this exploration.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. And maybe I'll leave you with this thought to mull over. Given these really impressive and quite diverse growth patterns we've seen across different regions, different countries, what broader societal changes or maybe what specific medical advancements do you believe are the main engines really driving this consistent global expansion in vascular access? Something to think about.